Welcome to the AVAIL podcast, where we dig deep and talk about the art of leadership. My name is Virgil Sierra, and today we're sitting down with Lance Witt. Lance is a veteran leader who has over 4 decades of leadership experience at different churches and organizations. He is the mind behind the 40 Days of Purpose campaign, author of multiple books, and the creator of Replenish, a ministry dedicated to helping people live and lead from a healthy soul. Today, we'll be listening in to part 1 of this conversation, where Lance will be speaking on the importance of paying attention to your soul and developing healthy pace and rhythm for your life. It's going to be a good one, so lean in, leaders, and let's get started. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the AVAIL podcast, where we dig deep and talk about the art of leadership. I got my intro music going. I'm excited because I got none other than Lance Witt here on the AVAIL podcast with us. Lance, it's an honor to have you as a guest to talk a little bit of leadership, a little bit of soul care. How you doing and how you feeling here on AVAIL?
Oh, doing good, Verge. Good to be with you and excited to be on the podcast today. And I am sitting here today in the middle of a snowstorm in Castle Rock, Colorado, and just dreaming of being where you are, where it's sunny in Florida.
Yes, sir. It's definitely not snowing here in South Florida, but may the Lord's presence keep you warm there in Colorado, you and your family. I'm excited. This is the part 1 of this conversation, the first episode here on the AVAIL podcast, where we're going to talk about I think an area that the Lord has not only gifted you in, Lance, but has really graced you to teach on, to communicate on. And it has to do with really paying attention to your soul. Before we get into the meat of the conversation, I would love for our AVAIL audience to lean in and get to know you a little bit better. Sure. Tell us maybe in a couple of minutes, who is Lance Witt?
Yeah, well, let me start first with my family. My wife and I will celebrate 45 years of marriage this year, which honestly feels pretty surreal to say. I mean, I got married when I was 19, but yeah, 45 years. Connie is my best friend and partner in ministry, and I love doing life with her. We have 2 grown kids. The best thing that people could know about my kids is that they produce grandkids.
Nice.
And so that has been an amazing thing. And what we didn't know when we moved to Colorado 12 years ago is that our kids would follow us here. And so now both of our kids and their families, all 4 of my granddaughters live within 1.5 miles of me. So Verge, I feel like I'm kind of living the dream personally. And then on the ministry side, I was a lead pastor for 20 years. Then in 1999, went and joined the staff at Saddleback Church out in Southern California with Rick Warren. I was there when he wrote the Purpose Driven Life book, and that was a game changer for him, our church, and brought a ton of opportunity, but also a lot of pressure and chaos. And that's a big piece of my story. And was there for 7 years. But we always say serving at Saddleback, it counts as dog years. Like, it may have only been 7 years, but it felt a lot longer. And then in late 2006 left. And then in 2007, pretty dramatic call to do what I'm doing now was the genesis of the ministry I'd lead called Replenish. And the mantra of my ministry is to help people live and lead from a healthy soul. And I always point out, I think the order of that's really important. Like we got to focus first on how we're living, and then out of a rich, flourishing life and the overflow of that we lead. And so I've been doing that for 17 years, trying to come alongside leaders and have conversations and best practices that help them actually flourish from a healthy soul.
Yeah, I love that. And for all the AVAIL audience out there, I can testify being at conferences, pastors' conferences, church leaders' conferences, and really being blessed by you, Lance, and by your teachings, by the books that you've written. I don't think we have time to go into all those books, but Replenish, high impact, healthy teams. High impact teams, which is another aspect of what you do at Replenish. And of course, Your One Life, which will probably, obviously, I think on the topics we're going to touch on in this conversation is connected there. But let's just talk about the heart of what you just said right now, paying attention to our souls. It's so easy to focus on the superficial part, what everybody else sees. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, so I think it's really connected to my story, Verge,
Mm-hmm.
because I, as a type A sort of driven, leader, always wanting to go hard, to make a difference, to achieve, hopefully to achieve for the sake of God's glory and the
Yeah.
advancement of the kingdom. But the result is you just end up being a doer. And so you never take time to think about the being side of life and who you are in your soul. And so I always tell people, like, theologically, obviously, as a pastor, I would have known I had a soul. I would have known that Jesus died for my soul and that someday my soul was going to be forever with God in heaven. I preach that. I teach that. I get it. What escaped me was that I should actually pay attention to my soul, and that just like my soul needs shepherding and transformation like my external life, I really didn't pay any attention to that. And I feel like a lot of our church's discipleship strategies are really nothing more than behavior modification. Like, just change how we live externally. But what we don't get at often is some of the deeper internal stuff in me that needs to be changed, that are rooted in my family of origin, are rooted in, faulty narratives that I constantly say to myself. And so, and by the way, I think this is very biblical. Like, it flows in all that Jesus said, that the Christian life is inside to outside. It always moves from root to fruit, from the invisible to the visible. It's why Solomon said, above everything else, guard your heart, guard your inner life. And so there's a quote I use a lot. And again, man, we can spend our whole session on this one thing, but I'll make it quick. So there's a quote I use a lot from Parker Palmer. He says, a leader has a special responsibility to pay attention to what's happening inside himself or herself, lest the act of leadership do more harm than good.
Wow.
And I think when you sit with that, that really is profound, because he's saying if you and I don't learn to pay attention to our inner lives, we run the risk of prostituting this sacred gift of leadership influence, and in the end do more harm than good. And man, have we seen that in spiritual leadership, ministry leadership over the last 15 or 20 years. Gifted leaders, influential leaders who lost their way because they didn't pay attention to their inner life. And so it's a big deal.
Yeah, this is good. I love what you're touching on. And I love, as you know, our AVAIL audience, we're talking to Christian leaders, a lot of them pastors, ministry leaders, Christians who have some kind of influence or position, even in the marketplace. And I think so often we are tempted to focus on the things that are on the outside, right? How do we increase our self-awareness about our inner life? Because like you said, we all believe it, we all preach it, we all tell other people about it, but how do we take steps into increasing self-awareness about where we are and how we're doing?
Yeah. Well, there's two primary responses in my mind when you ask that question. The first one I would not advise. The first one is to have a crash, to hit the wall, to burn out, right? And that's some of my story coming out of Saddleback. Like, I wasn't leading myself well. And I always tell people that season of my life was both the most intoxicating and toxic all at the same time. Like, wow. As a type A driver, compulsively busy person, getting a job like I had at Saddleback was like an alcoholic getting a job at a bar. It wasn't a good combination. And so I was on the path to blowing up my life, to, my marriage potentially falling apart. And so, I think one way, and a way a lot of us, God gets our attention about this, is we tend to have a moment of crisis. Mm-hmm. But I don't think that's the only way. That's not the best way. And especially, I think, for young leaders, I want to be a person who has a voice into their world saying, hey, there's a different way. And the second way I think you raise self-awareness is you got to slow down and you have to begin to examine and let the Holy Spirit begin to reveal things to you about broken places inside of you. And honestly, Verge, I get to deal with a lot of leaders, and I think their biggest lid is not their communication style. It's not their leadership strategy. It really is their lack of self-awareness.
Wow.
And, whatever's in us internally always leaks out externally, right?
Yeah.
And when you got broken junk in you and dysfunction in you and old patterns from your family of origin, they tend to spill out on your spouse, on your kids, on your team. And so I think, but man, when you are a driver, and again, a lot of people who are going to listen to this podcast, you're a leader. And as a leader, you're a driver and you make things happen and you get stuff done. And so one of the things that's hard for leaders is to slow down long enough to actually let God, expose and then begin to heal and transform some of those things internally.
Yeah. So I want to, in a moment, I want to jump into pace and rhythm. I know this is really important.
Yeah.
But before we go there, I've heard you talk about triggers, right? Some things that are important to consider could be triggers in our life, in our relationships. What would you say are some triggers or some things that maybe, hey, this is a red light. This is something that if I don't pay attention to, could become one of these crises or crashes.
Yeah. I think first of all, I'd say you've got to be curious about yourself and your own soul. And like, why do certain things trigger you? Like you come out of a conversation or a meeting with someone and you go, okay, why did I just get defensive? What's behind that? What's going on? Or why do I compulsively always say yes to everything and constantly overschedule myself? Like, what's going on in my soul? Because often the external response is only the symptom of a deeper issue, right? And I remember one day, I have always been very obsessed with productivity and managing my time and schedule. And so one day I was working on my calendar and it was like the Holy Spirit just took the spotlight off my calendar, put it on my soul, and I just began to hear these questions in my spirit. So Lance, why are you always so compulsively busy? Why do you overcommit all the time? Why do you care so much what everybody thinks of you? Like, this isn't a calendar issue. This is a soul care issue. So I think some common triggers are when you get irritable, when you get defensive, when you feel deflated and defeated, maybe when you feel insecure in a moment, right? But I think part of your journey is learning to understand what does trigger you. And then the deeper question is why? And so then you begin this journey of becoming more self-aware. And, I love that statement that self-awareness is your best defense against self-deceit. And the more you understand the triggers, I always say all of us have these internal narratives, right? The story that we're telling ourselves over and over again. And we all have them. And some of them we picked up from bad experiences in our life. Some of them we picked up maybe from good parenting, but a lot of us picked up our narratives from, a family of origin that left us with issues, right? Like, so my dad was a great Christian man, but one of his highest, values was responsibility. So the narrative I picked up early on in my life was work hard, be responsible, achieve. That's how you succeed, and that's how you get love.
Right.
So when that's the story you constantly tell yourself, you're going to always focus on externals, and you're only as good as your latest achievement. Well, just being able to identify that verge and call it and name it has been so helpful in me being able to deal with it. Now, I think I'm probably going to deal with this the rest of my life, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I found some ways to head it off at the pass and to keep it from being so dysfunctional in my life. But it is because over years, I've been working to slow down, be more introspective, listen, be able to be quiet. And God has used that as he's been working on me from the inside out.
I love this conversation. I have to admit a little bit of conviction right now, but that's okay. I still feel
Hey,
like you're
me
my friend.
too. Me too.
All right, so let's transition into really unpacking the concept of pace and rhythm, because everything you're saying, I think most of us as leaders can relate to, because we do want to get things done, and we do have things to do, but not at the expense of the health of our souls. Talk to us a little bit about, because you mentioned, really part of self-awareness is slowing down, and that's connected to our pace, our rhythm of life. Can you just unpack that a little bit for us? Christian leaders around the world are taking advantage of their free annual subscription to the AVAIL Journal. After all, each one of us should be taking the next step in our leadership journey. When you sign up for a free annual subscription to the AVAIL Journal, you'll enjoy interviews, articles, resources, and much more. For more information and to get subscribed today, visit availjournal.com.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love talking about this because it's been such an important part of my own journey. And, I think, again, if you are a leader, you tend toward workaholism, overcommitment, saying yes to too many things,
Mm-hmm.
opportunities that come your way. And so I always think it's important in this discussion, especially with leaders, to go, hey, we're not trashing hard work.
Right.
Hard work matters. In fact, even if you go back to the beginning when Genesis, and God establishes this thing of Sabbath, he worked, he produced for 6 days before he rested on the seventh. And so hard work is good. But I think what we want to learn is this biblical rhythm that God established, which is work really hard and then rest really hard. Produce really well and then unplug really well. And I think one of the reasons is that a lot of us walk around pretty exhausted is we don't do either one fully. Like we sort of work, but we're sort of distracted. We're sort of, fiddle our time away on social media. And then when we're off, we're not really off. We're still plugged into email. We still are on our phone all the time. And so we've not learned this. And I really do think it is a biblical rhythm where God said, work, then rest. And I think in America, what we tend to do is like, man, we just go crazy. We burn out, exhaust ourselves, and then we go for a 2-week vacation. And nothing wrong with a 2-week vacation, but I think God would say, you know what? I have a better strategy. And that strategy is every week to have a rhythm that includes work and then rest. And so, this has been a really big challenge for me because I am a person that doesn't relax well. I'm always got a bit of a restless spirit, and I like being active. So when I first got introduced to this idea of Sabbath, and I would say if there's been one thing that's been the game changer in my life when it comes to pace and rhythm, it is embracing Sabbath and rest. But I got to tell you, as a driven leader, at first I hated it because, Virg, even if I cleared my calendar and tried to slow down on the outside, on the inside, I was still restless. I always describe it like I was a car that was in park, but the engine was on and I was flooring the gas pedal. So it may not have looked like I was doing much on the outside, but internally my RPMs were still redlining. And so, but over time, I've learned how to slow down my soul and slow down my schedule and my commitments and practice. Like I want to work hard and want to be productive, but now I'm at this place in my life where I go, hey, Sabbath is coming.
Yeah.
Like, my wife and I just got back from Israel. I was doing some ministry there. Plus we did some touring. It was my first time to ever be there. And, nationally, they actually, like, the country stops at sundown on Friday night.
Mm-hmm.
And so they have it built in where Sabbath is part of the culture. But it was interesting dealing with people who do ministry in Israel and how even though they shut down as a culture, they still could be busy as people in ministry, right? And not experience a life-giving Sabbath. But I really do believe that God has this principle of a 1 in 7 principle, where I would have a day that I unplug. And I'll just walk through these real quick, Verge, but there's 5 words I use as a template to think about how people could practice Sabbath, right? So it's prepare, stop, rest, delight, and worship. So prepare is there's some work involved in getting ready not to work, like getting it on your calendar, getting your chores and the have-to stuff out of the way so that when you get to that start of Sabbath, you can actually unplug. And then to stop. Like the word Sabbath, Shabbat, literally in Hebrew just means to quit or to stop. So what would it look like for you to stop from work, from obligation, from the stuff that's draining to you, the stuff that you have to do? What would it look like for you to stop for 24 hours and then rest? Because it is a day of rest. It's a day, it's the Hebrew word manuha, which means to delightful repose, tranquility. And I think it is physical rest, but I think it's also experiencing shalom, that peace and rest in your soul.
Yeah.
But then the 4th word I use is delight. I always ask leaders when I teach on this, what is life-giving to you? What puts life in your tank? And Sabbath is a great day to do that. And you go, well, I have people say to me, well, I love to work. I'm going, okay, well, find some other things that put life in your job, right? And so what's life-giving to you? What fills you up? Identify that and schedule that into your Sabbath. By the way, I don't think Sabbath means you got to sit around in your recliner and just take naps all day long. I think it's okay to still be active, but it ought to include being at rest.
Yeah.
And then the last word I use is the word worship, because it is a Sabbath unto the Lord. And so Sabbath ought to be a day where we have more unhurried time to sit with the Word of God, to pray and to linger over gratitude and to take a walk and just reflect on God's goodness. Like it ought to be an unrushed time. It ought to be quality time with our Savior. So anyway, when I think about rhythm and rest, Sabbath, if I could give one kind of practical strategy, that would be it.
Yeah, that's good. It's funny because I think a lot of us, maybe in our leadership wiring and from so many years of doing, we don't see pace as a soul care issue. We see pace as a time management issue, as a organizational issue. But you're challenging us today to see pace as caring for my inner life, for my soul. And you've also mentioned the concept of having rails or boundaries. Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, I think, you need to establish, like, what would it look like? Here's a great question for you to have with your family. What would it look like for us to have a healthy pace of life? Like, what do we need to say no to? Like, I think there's this pressure today for parents to have their kids in 3, 4, 5 extracurricular activities and sports coaches. And I'm going, really? Do you have to do that?
Yeah.
Maybe there's a better way rather than our kids just being absolutely exhausted all the time. And a guardrail would be like, okay, each kid gets one extracurricular activity. Or another guardrail would be like, we do dinner together as a family 5 nights a week.
Okay.
Here, I'll give you a couple more I think have been game changers for me, Verge. And I really picked these up from Greg McKeown's book, Essentialism. But he talks about one is having an opportunity filter. And a lot of leaders, because you get it done people, a lot of opportunities come your way. A lot of people invite you to do things. And having an opportunity filter, like, what is the criteria that I would use to say yes to something? And I always feel like as a pastor, especially, I had a faulty, what I would call theology of availability. Like, I was supposed to always be available, but I challenge you to go to the Gospels and look at the life of Jesus. He was not always available.
Right.
And so I think to have an opportunity filter and go based on your wiring, your calling, your season of life with your family, what are the opportunities you should say yes to? And by the way, I think part of this is learning to embrace your limits as a gift from God. Limited time. You don't have all the spiritual gifts. Your season of life is a limitation. Your health might be a limitation. And part of a healthy life is learning to actually see those limits as
Wow.
guardrails from God that help me stay in a healthy place. The last guardrail I just mentioned is learning to not say yes in the moment, right? How many times have somebody asked me and I go, yeah, sure, of course I'll do that, without really taking time to consider, like, what's the impact on my schedule?
Uh-huh.
Because rarely in the moment do I fully understand everything I'm saying yes to, right?
Sure.
It allows me to step back. So put space between somebody's request of you to do something and your agreement to do it. I think those could be like practical guardrails that are going to help rhythm and pace be more healthy for me.
Yeah. This is such a good conversation. I think we need to wrap up this first part because we're going to have a second part, Lance. We're going to have a part 2 to this
All right.
conversation, and I'd love for you to just mention one of your most recent books is Your One Life, right? Which is all about, hey, if there's something you need to steward, it's your life, right? And I want to point people in the direction of this book. Can you maybe say a few lines of what was on your heart when you wrote that book?
Well, one, I'm in my 60s now, and I'm starting to think about, like, I have 4 granddaughters, 2 that are 10, 2 that are 8. Like, what would I want them to know about what does it look like to live a well-lived, rich, meaningful life?
Wow.
So some of it is just 6 decades of being on the planet. If I could sit down and have a cup of coffee with somebody, what would I say to them about what I've learned, both mistakes as well as places where I've have had some success, about what it means to live life? Because here's the thing that starts to hit when you get to be my age, Vert, is you realize, like, man, the clock is ticking. And you get one shot at your one and only life, right? And there's no do-overs, no mulligan, no second go round. Like, you get one shot at this thing called life. And man, the days are clicking off. And, kind of the signature verse of the book is Psalm 90:12. Lord, teach us to number our days that we may have a heart of wisdom. Like, I need to stare in the face, like, I've got limited time and I want to make sure I'm living life well. And so the book is really just, how do you live a rich and meaningful life with the one and only life that you've been called to steward?
I love this. Leaders, you must add this to your leadership library and resources. The book is Your One Life by yours truly, Lance Witt. This book, where can they get it, Lance? What's the best place to find it?
Yeah, best place. I mean, you can get it most places where books would be sold, but I would, Amazon is, and you can probably get it a little cheaper on Amazon. So that's where, probably 90% of the people who buy the book get it is from Amazon. And you can go to my website, replenish.net, and there's a way there to link to buying the book as well.
Yeah, that's good. Here at AVAIL, we always want to put resources in your hands as leaders. This resource, Lance Witt's book, Your One Life. By the way, his other books are extraordinary as well. Add them to your leadership library. This is our heart at AVAIL. We produce a book monthly for your leadership library. We produce the quarterly AVAIL Journal, or AVAIL Leadership Magazine, as you can see, always bringing some great content. We think, Lance, that it's good to put resources in our leaders' hands. The AVAIL Journal, this comes out quarterly. If you're listening, you're watching, by the way, you can get 1 year for free on us. Claim your free annual subscription by going to availjournal.com. I can imagine, Lance, in your leadership journey, there's a lot of things you read that helped you along your journey.
Yes, a lot. And some of them are behind me right now, just all the books and stuff I've read. But yes, I love good podcasts, good articles. Yep. Huge blessing. So thanks for doing that.
Yes, sir. Yeah. So if you haven't done so, availjournal.com, you can get your free annual subscription of the AVAIL Journal. As we close off this first part of our conversation, this first podcast, Lance, what do you want to leave on leaders' hearts as they're leaning in right now? They're processing everything you shared. What's one final nugget you want to leave on their hearts?
I think it would be around this issue of pace and rhythm. And I think just to take a long-term view, like, you're not going to solve this probably in week 1, but this is worth fighting for. And I'll just leave you with kind of just this statement. You can't live life at warp speed without warping your soul.
Woo.
And so if you're going to have a healthy soul, you're going to have to learn how to slow down and have a life-giving rhythm and pace.
I love it. You heard it, everybody. Drop the mic. That's Lance Witt. You can't live life at a warped speed without warping your soul. Truth is spoken. Lance, on behalf of Dr. Sam Chand, Martijn Van Tilborg from our AVAIL team, everybody else behind the scenes here at AVAIL, we just want to honor you and thank you for leading well and for being such an instrument in God's hands to encourage us. We bless you. We honor you, brother.
Thank you, my friend. Great to be with you today. Grateful for you and your friendship.
Yes, sir. Hey, everybody. I hope you've been encouraged by this episode. You know, every Tuesday, a new podcast episode drops here. We talk leadership. We talk life. It's an honor. My name is Virgil Sierra, lead pastor of Vertical Church, a.k.a. Iglesia Vertical in South Florida. We're one church, two languages. And I'm your host on this AVAIL podcast every week. We love you, everybody. We'll catch you next time right here on the AVAIL podcast. Thank you for joining us for this episode of the AVAIL podcast with our guest, Lance Witt. You can find out more about Lance by going to replenish.net. For more leadership resources, check us out at theartofleadership.com. And make sure to claim your free annual subscription of the AVAIL Journal at availjournal.com. As always, I'm your AVAIL podcast host, Virgil Sierra. Muchas gracias. Thank you for connecting with us to learn the art of leadership here at the AVAIL podcast.